Greetings, Dr. Marty, and dear listeners. I am Chung from course Fin 2016, and today I will be discussing the case study of the ongoing US-China trade war. In today's presentation, I will cover the history of the trade war, the current state of the affairs, the impacted parties, and the recommendations. Alright, so let's get into it. First, we're starting with the history of the affair. The beginning dated back to 2018 during Trump's first presidency. To give you guys a little bit of context, US and China are rivals in many aspects, such as politics, militaries, alliances, and many others. One major thing is the economy. China is the US biggest contender for the number one spot, and right now they are having a much higher growth rate. However, under all of that disputes, China and the US are each other's biggest trading partners. As you can see, they are two giants with a trade economy of about $660 billion by the time of measures. However, on the surface it looked good, but only for China. The US was in $490 billion trading deficit, which means they are buying from China more than they are sending to China. Seeing this, in an attempt to balance the deficit, on February 2018, President Trump imposed tariffs on solar panels and washing machines following the Section 201 investigation. As you can see in the graphs, upon imposing the tariffs, the import of solar panels dropped by a little bit, however, it slowly recovered, but from other trading partners and from the US themselves. So, seeing the gradual positive effect, Trump started imposing more tariffs on products which China is a strong exporter of. This move seemingly targeting China. So knowing the nature of China and their competitiveness, they did not stand still. China responded with its own wave of tariffs targeting about $100 billion of US export. And then, the war begins. The war lasted even Trump stepped down. Tension peaked during May of 2019, although it eased off during the COVID times and Biden administration. However, things took major turns when Trump took his second presidency in 2025, and that leads us to the second part, the current affair. So in April 2025, Trump released a list of reciprocal tariffs to every trading partners. I will not go deep into this issue because it belongs to another topic. However, China got hit with 34% of tariffs, which is not very high compared to other countries like Cambodia, who got hit with 49% of tariffs. But you have to keep in mind, China has many tariff layers from 2018, 2019, and 2020, such as Section 301, anti-dumping duties on average affected products, and reciprocal tariffs of 2025. So all of that added up to an effective rate of 104% of tariffs. What this essentially means is that if you're buying steel coil from China, which has a base import value of $10,000, combined with all the tariff prices, it will add up to an effective price of $23,000, which is more than double the price. This, of course, caused serious harm to China's exporting economy. So, how did the Chinese respond? Within days of Washington's announcement, China's unveiled reciprocal counter tariffs on about $120 billion of the US goods. Focusing politically on sensitive exports such as agriculture goods, liquefied natural gas, auto and aircraft parts, whiskey, almonds, and other US state-linked exports. The tariff rates range from 30% to 100%, mirroring the structure of the US action, a symbolic equal response. So, the Chinese people are very persistent about the problem. Chairman Xi refused to stand back down despite facing additional tariff increase and restrictions from the US, and during a China 4 interview, Victor Gao, Chinese analyst, stated that China has survived for 5,000 years, most of it without the US. So they are very persistent about the problem. However, fast forward to the latter part of 2025, With no surprises, having so many restrictions and tariffs, the economy will eventually take a detrimental downturn. Both sides considered the pros and cons, decided it was causing more harm than achieved its initial goal, which is to control the behavior of the rivals. So that leads us to October 25 with the Busan Summit, where both leaders agree on announcing a one-year tariff truce, suspending certain export controls, and committing to a working group to renegotiate fair and reciprocal trade. The aftermath of the war, although it's still ongoing, just on a pause, tariffs on key consumer goods were partially rolled back or suspended. Agriculture trade recovered modestly, and markets reacted positively. All in all, war is postponed for now, and tensions roll back, tariffs and suspensions temporarily taken down. So the next part is the affected parties and the effect that the trade war has had on countries, businesses, and individuals. First, we start with the economy on both the US and China. So both economies suffer slower growth, higher prices, and investment uncertainty. So over on the left is the US trade in goods with China conducted by the United States Census Bureau. As you can see, these tables compare the performance of the first 7 months of 2024 and 2025. Exports to China decreases from 81,000 to 65,000. In imports from China decreased from 239,000 to 193. So this means both the exporting from the US and China has decreased since the tariffs were announced and the war continued in 2025. So on the US, the annual GDP growth is projected to fall from 2.8% in 2024 to 1.8% in 2025. US exports to China dropped from 25 to 30%, billions in farm losses due to soybean, corn, pork tariffs. The annual inflation in 2025 were added roughly 1 percentage point. On China's side, however, GDP growth declined from 6.6 in 2018 to 4.6 in 2025. Exports to the US fell by 30%, which are diverted to ASEAN, Latin America, and Africa. This is called the trade diversion. And their currency, yuan, depreciated to 7.4 per USD in the middle of 2025. This means the FDI inflows also fall by 27%. However, in the midst of chaos, China pushed their domestic chip, battery, and AI capabilities more effectively and faster. Next up, we have the global economy. Supply chains are reshaped through the China Plus One program, which divert the manufacturing plants to other neighboring countries with cheap labor like Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. By 2025, over 30% of US import substitution from China went to Asian economies. The global GDP reduced by 0.4 to 0.6 percentage point annually from 2019 to 2025. This equivalent to $800 billion in lost output. And finally, the foreign direct investment FDI are redirected following the supply chain being reshaped. The global contraction and shifts to Asians, like the aforementioned, if you notice in the graphs, in 2018, where the tariffs and the trades began, the FDI in developed countries dropped, and in the developing countries, the FDI increased and kept their stages. Right, so that's the economy. What about the businesses and the industries? So first we have the agriculture in the US. Farm export to China fell about 53% in 2018, which equivalent to 22 billion of goods targeted. Manufacturing fell by $162 billion, and export, which includes China tech export to the US, down by $130 billion, and US export to China down by $32 billion. Next, we have the automotive and machinery in the US again, dropping by 2.7%. Other industries like metals and materials in the US, imports of Chinese steel dropped by 53% after tariff hikes, energy and commodities dropping by 40%, and consumers goods and retails up their prices by 5 to 15% after major retailer hits. So those are the most notable changes in the most important industry, which happen to be the most targeted industry by the tariffs and the trade wars. Who do you think are the victims of this war? Is it the big companies? Is it the economy? Or is it Trump and Xi Jinping and their family? No, the lasting victim of the war is actually the consumers, like people like us, especially the low middle income households. They are faced with increased prices on retail products and necessities, inflation, and unemployment rates. And also, small and middle sized businesses, US manufacturers relying on Chinese components face higher input costs and shrinking margins. Many couldn't ship supply chains quickly or absorb costs like large corporations could, and therefore they have to close. So, seeing the consequences, I have recommendations for all the parties to avoid taking the most damage from the trade wars of the giants. First of all, government. They have to diversify trade partnerships, strengthen cooperation through the World Trade Organizations. They can target, but don't blanket, use precise time-limited tariffs instead of sweeping measures that hurt consumers in the long run. Invest in domestic resilience and communicate policy clearly to reduce market uncertainty. Next one is the businesses, especially the multinational ones. They can adopt the China Plus One or regional diversification to avoid relying too much on China's manufacturing power. They can digitalize supply chains, build financial aid and inventory buffers, engage in long-term compliance, and prioritize transparency and sustainability. And finally, for consumers like us, we have to expect price fluctuations. We can support local and diversify sourcing to reduce dependence on importing essentials. We can stay informed about the trade policies and how they influence inflation and job markets. Finally, advocate for fair but open trade. Because there is nothing else we can really do, and we do not have control over the war. And that will be the end of my presentation. Here are my references and the appendix on the tariff war in 2025 for more clear readings. Thank you.